holier than thou. I'm superior to you because of how much I beat myself. And that is where they got into trouble. The first recorded public flagellation was actually in 1259.
Oh, okay.
Before the plague really hit.
Okay.
By the 1340s, they were banned by the Pope because they were claiming that flagellation absolves you of sins.
Right.
And the Pope said, that's my job.
That's the church's job. They were taking away the
and
church's
this is something we see with a lot of heretical movements, is you're threatening, and we haven't had time to talk about a little bit like the Anabaptists.
Right.
Like there were people who said, denying transubstantiation, which means that God doesn't inhabit the host, therefore you don't really need a priest. So this is a real power threat. So they were a power threat. They were also becoming a public nuisance.
Right.
They really would. They would come through, they would demand money. And
they were themselves vectors.
Yes, because of course they got open source.
They've got open source. They're bleeding all over the place. Bits of flesh and blood are flying everywhere while they're beating each other.
I mean,
and people would go to watch.
Like, oh, cool. Oh,
yeah.
Hey, Mom, you see this guy? He's really gross.
So rather than ending this plague, they become the vectors of spreading it.
So
oddly enough, after every flat Earth debate, I also do that. I also beat myself like that.
Yeah, I can see that. Are you a vector for flat Earth thought? It's a question.
Although I wish we could go back and change it to the flatulence part, because if they would just put Taco Bells in these towns and flatulence was the way to get rid of it, then there would be no plague. It would be cured, like that.
Let's wrap this up, because we've shown
a couple more things here, because the flagellants were, because they became self-righteous, because they claimed to know more, they were eventually persecuted. And as people who wanted to prove that they were better by enduring pain, were taken out and burned. And on one occasion, they burned over 300 of them in one day.
Right.
Oh, hands. But this,
they didn't play
you
back
like
then.
Pain? We'll show you pain.
Yeah, we'll be happy to oblige.
So you want to start wrapping it up? Talk about some full circle about
I want to.
What have we learned?
What have we learned? What are we taking away from this that we're insane?
Yes, these are two.
People were mean back then. People were very mean back then.
But
and they still are.
We have not gotten to all of the heretics. There will be bigger and more impressive heretical movements like Wycliffe and the Lollards, and that's going to lead into the Peasants' Revolt in England, and of course Jan Hus and the Hussites, and that's going to be a huge war. That's something we'll have to talk about later. That's something that we've actually made a documentary on.
Yeah.
That
we can pitch that Giordano Bruno and
Giordano,
get on up until even like the Millerites.
Joan of Arc.
Oh, Joan of Arc. We had a whole bunch on Joan of Arc, but that's okay. Yeah. You know who Joan of Arc was? She's this.
I would love to do a show on Joan of Arc.
Yep. But then all of a sudden things change. Martin Luther. That's the dividing line.
Well, Martin Luther changed because his group became mainstream and survived.
Right.
And as I said, the Waldensians are still around, but they kind of merged. There's a few others of these.
There's Hussites still around.
Hussites were reestablished.
Yeah.
That doesn't quite count. There's a few others that survived in smaller numbers. The Manichaeans lasted until the 15th century in China. But with Luther, you had what was a heresy become mainstream enough that suddenly...
Well, but he had weapons on his side. He had weapons on his side. Number one, he was preaching a message against indulgences, which were things that you could purchase in order to get your family out of purgatory. He had a message against those and against a whole bunch of other things that was very popular to people. Number two, he could get the message out. The printing press had been developed just before Martin Luther had started preaching. So that's another difference. Instead of one guy in one place giving a message out.
For the record, we disagree on this.
Yeah,
I believe the reason that Martin Luther survived and succeeded and changed the whole dynamic of how we look at heresy is that his principal opponent was Charles V of Spain, who was the Holy Roman Emperor, who basically allowed the Lutherans, he could have gone to war with them. And he allowed them to survive because he was too busy making money off the Americas.
Right.
And Charles was basically at the time when Spain had just taken over South America.
Right.
And that was where his mind was. And I think, honestly, yes, the Columbus helped change the attitude towards heresy.
Right, because what Columbus and Vespucci and Magellan showed everybody in Europe was that all of a sudden there was a hemisphere out there that the Bible did not talk about. They had, before Columbus, they had completely figured out where everyone was from. You know, you had the separate sons of Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac, the sons of Ham, and they could trace where everybody in Asia and the Middle East and Africa and Europe was from. But here's a continent, two continents that were not mentioned in the Bible, that they had no way of fitting into their genealogy.
Okay. But we also, the printing press
and
spread
that
information,
that really blew
literacy,
their minds. So
and the downfall of feudalism. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happened.
And Luther had very strong, prominent, and rich supporters. The princes of Germany saw that if they could separate themselves from the Catholic Church, then their tithes were no longer going to the Catholic Church, and they didn't have.
Well,
not as good.
But anyway, this is a bigger topic, and we don't have time to go into it. But one of the things that I take away from this whole discussion is the stupid you will always have with you. I think that's in the Bible, isn't it? Something like that.
Something like that.
But it's how you deal with them. And, you know, I think you guys do a great job in exposing some of the dumber ideas in our society. And I really think it's good that you don't kill them.
Well,
but there are so many occasions where I would love to have the option to put them on a rack or flay them alive.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was not an option. Yeah, that news to me.
We are happy we love dissent. We love the underdog. We love that somebody goes up against. We're rooting for the David against the Goliaths. But I think that kind of idea comes from post-printing press, post-scientific method, post-Age of Enlightenment. And we have moved the world around to understand things better. And we feel that we have an agency in how we think, that we no longer have to be dependent on other people telling us, that authority telling us what to think.
The scientific revolution was a huge part of it.
Well, there's
a way that we know what we know.
Right.
As opposed to, it's in a book and this man in a funny hat says it's true. We know, and this is one of the reasons why I think science education is so important, is, you know, don't tell me that heat rises. Tell me how you know that heat rises.
Right.
Tell me how you know how fast the speed of light travels. Because that's science, that's an understanding, and that's something we can work with.
And the scientific method is a human-based standard. We don't have an authority giving us this information. We can test it ourselves. We can understand it that way. We do not need received wisdom.
And we have to continue to fight for that, because there are certainly people who say, well, my professor says, as if that explains something.
Yep. Yeah.
And my professor says things about history.
Don't listen to me.
You're both fantastic ministers of scientism, by the way.
So you finish with your final.
How much do the Illuminati pay you to divulge?
Yeah, you're both. Well, that was. I must tell you guys. I've got to tell you both. That was fantastic. People didn't want you to. People didn't want you to end it there. So I have to tell you that. I believe we have a couple super chats, and then guys, if you have any questions, just make sure you tag me in them, and then I'll ask them. But Steve, you want to? I have a question, real quick. Is that an Oscar on your mantle behind you?
No.
Nope.
That is a Telly Award. It's actually a fairly low-level award. We have better awards on the walls upstairs, but it is. They decided to make it look like that. It's done for a group of TV commercials we did a million years ago. But
cool. That was a question out of the live chat. So
sorry.
That was a question that happened in the live chat, so I wanted to settle the debate.
Okay, it does look like it in the video. That's true. That's also a Native American pottery or basket. And there's a replica of a 18th century spotting telescope.
I should be more gentle with it.
That's something that. What's the backstory on this?
This is a Wintu basket. The Wintus were a tribe in Northern California. This was given to my grandmother almost 100 years ago, and by a Mr. Barker. And it's these kind of baskets are woven so tightly that you can boil water in them.
But she won't.
They cooked in them. No, I won't let him do that. But
wow,
yeah,
that's
they're really
insane.
meaningful.
That is pretty impressive.
Here's something for you. The when Wintus would make baskets and would try to make them as good as they possibly could. And when a Wintu died, their baskets were buried with them. And I always challenge my students, why, if you were a nomadic people, Stone Age people like the Wintu were, just barely in the kind of the Neolithic period, but they did not build shelters that much. They used obsidian tools, and they wove these amazing baskets. Why, if these were the most important things you had, they did everything with these baskets, why would you bury them?
Because you need them in the afterlife.
With the dead. Pardon?
You need them in the afterlife.
Nope. That might
Too
have
much
been
to carry?
some religion, but there was a very practical reason why they buried them.
Keep the basket.
Too much to carry.
Nope.
Go on.
Nope. The basket went with the basket maker to make sure that every generation learned how to make the baskets perfectly.
Okay. Job security.
Ah.
Yeah.
Not job security, just making sure that everyone knew how to make the basket as well as they
Throwing
possibly
them in the deep end. It's a very throw them in the deep end philosophy.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to remake. You wouldn't have to learn it again, and they would
That is
be guaranteed passing the baskets down.
I can't believe you can boil water out of that. Steve, you want to go ahead and read super chats?
Yeah.
All right, Andrea Batella, £5. Aristotle, quote, "The earth is flat, gravity is fake, things fall to the ground because earth attracts earth, fire attracts fire." Yeah. By the way, Aristotle got a lot of stuff wrong, but he was great for his time.
Never said the earth was flat. No, Aristotle said the earth was round. Okay.
Yeah, I
sorry.
know. He was kidding, but he did get a lot of stuff wrong, like the square of opposition and stuff. But yeah, that was a fake quote. He wasn't being serious.
Yes.
KW New York upstate, $2. Didn't they find the Holy Grail in the Last Crusade? I believe they did, didn't they? That was the movie though, not the actual.
I stopped watching those the Indiana Jones.
It's got Sean Connery in him.
Yeah, I know. I do still do.
But
who doesn't?
Find yes. Obviously, the Holy Grail. The mythos of the Holy Grail is curious about how he was believed to have been taken to England and
with Joseph of Arimathea.
I don't know where the story came from, but obviously, there's nothing. So.
And the last one, and probably kind of a good way to end this. So if you got nothing else, maybe they can kind of end it with this. Ikinu 5 for $5 says, "Please have them do the Spanish Inquisition sketch again. That is all."
We'll have to practice.
I mean,
they want you to put your that scene where you put your hats on very dramatically.
Yeah, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Stop.
What?
Don't do this right. Oh, look, here's a picture of who is that? That's Jacques de Molay. Let me find my Inquisition picture here.
That's good. No, you're supposed to say no one expects. That's yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so de Molay was, of course, not really part of the Inquisition. Do I have any images of the Inquisition here? The Dominicans were very much the guys behind the Inquisition.
Right. In the Monty Python sketch, the red robes, they wouldn't have worn the red robes. That was because that would mean that they're cardinals, Cardinal Fang.
Oh, you're killing my childhood memories.
Yeah.
My childhood is alive now.
There was, of course, Inquisition was started, as we said, in France, but it spread, and there was, an Inquisition in France and Germany. And,
you're not on us.